morning.
Good morning. Afternoon.
Or afternoon.
Okay, you'll just hold on just a second. We're having obviously a little IT issue here. So.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Bollinger. We show you registered as Brian Bollinger on behalf of the Texas Association of School Boards, and that you will be testifying neutrally. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Mr. Salinas, we show you registered as Arturo Salinas on behalf of the Texas Association of School Boards, and that you will be testifying neutrally. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you both for being here. Go ahead.
So I have a statement, if that's okay. So good afternoon. I'm Brian Bollinger. I'm the Associate Executive Director for Business Services at the Texas Association of School Boards, otherwise known as TASB for short. With me today, Arturo Salinas. He's the Division Director for Cooperative Purchasing at TASB, and we really appreciate you all inviting us here today. It's my understanding, and we heard just a minute ago, that there are questions about Buy Board, which is the trade name for the local government purchasing cooperative here in Texas. Essentially, the cooperative, again better known as Buy Board, is an administrative agency of cooperating governmental entities formed through an interlocal contract where members are able to pool together their purchasing power to achieve better pricing on products, equipment, and services that they use every day. The goal is to lessen the burden of government so that our members can direct their resources to their core business, which in the case of school district is educating our students. The local government purchasing cooperative has been operating in Texas for nearly 3 decades. It's been providing its members with streamlined procurement processes that offer convenience and value to them. The cooperative was originally formed by 4 school districts that came together because they wanted a better and more efficient way to purchase goods and services. Since then, the cooperative has expanded to include other governmental entities like cities, counties, and even municipal utility districts. The local government purchasing cooperative is governed by an 11-member board, which is comprised of a combination of elected officials and employees of participating governmental entities. Additionally, the cooperative is accredited by the Central Texas Purchasing Alliance as well as the University of Texas system, and that speaks to the quality and reputation of the cooperative. It has been said that TASB owns the cooperative. That's not the case. The cooperative is an independent entity that has hired TASB to be its administrator through a contractual agreement between the 2 entities. Through this agreement, TASB is responsible for competitively procuring vendors for the contracts the cooperative board awards. For instance, members of my team, including Arturo, complete competitive procurement processes on behalf of the Buy Board and its members, ensuring full alignment to Texas state procurement laws. This includes advertising the bids, releasing the bids, holding a sealed bidding process, and rating each potential vendor for each contract for things like price, reputation, quality, past performance, etc. Once this rating occurs and is complete, recommendations are made to the cooperative's board on which vendors to approve. The board then reviews those recommendations, they hold discussions, and they vote on vendors at its regularly scheduled board meetings. While there are several purchasing cooperatives operating in Texas, Buy Board is just one that multi-award vendors. This allows more vendors to participate while also offering more vendor choice to cooperative members, including many mom and pop companies in small towns in Texas. In many instances, this can result in additional savings for members who have more options to select from. Additionally, this offers local governments here in Texas the ability to purchase from vendors local to their region or area, which allows them to support their local communities. It's important to note that local governments are typically members of several purchasing cooperatives. We just heard that. Buy Board is by far not the largest purchasing cooperative operating in the state of Texas. There are many direct competitors to Buy Board, including Omnia Partners, Sourcewell, E&I, Keystone, TIPS, and Equalis. We see this competition as beneficial for Texas governments, fostering healthy market dynamics that support our members and create valuable opportunities for small, locally owned businesses, especially in rural areas that might not otherwise reach entities at this scale. Basically, purchasing cooperatives operating in the state of Texas allow a Blanco ISD to have the same purchasing power as a Pasadena ISD. All purchasing cooperatives should exist to provide value, choice, efficiency, and in most cases, cost savings. In Buy Board's case, for each contract awarded, one procurement process is completed on behalf of all members in the state, saving them time, cost, and effort of completing each procurement process on their own. Of course, each member can conduct their own procurement. Accordingly, governmental entities in Texas have several purchasing options, which creates competition and great value with each purchase. So again, thank you for having us here today, and we'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you. Any question? Representative Olcott. Do you have some?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. So I understand that TASB receives significant taxpayer funding from taxpayers through school district memberships. Should taxpayers have direct oversight how TASB operates?
That is a good question, sir. That is above my purview at TASB. I mean, I run the purchasing cooperative in some of our business lines. I don't deal with the government relations side of the house, but I can get you that answer, or I can have somebody reach out to you if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great if you could reach out to my office. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. And I'm not sure if you'd be able to answer this question. Would you support a public audit of TASB's finances and activities to determine how much taxpayer money is actually spent on services like legal services, legal counsel, board training, and DIE initiatives?
Yeah, again, that's not part of my job. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. TASB is I'm sure as you know, is an independent nonprofit, so I don't know how all that would work. I apologize for not being able to answer that.
Sure. Would you be able to provide an answer to that question to my office?
Yes, sir.
as
We
well?
could absolutely have
Thank you.
somebody answer that for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Representative King.
I'm impressed that you guys are before this committee right now. How did TASB get involved with the Buy Board process? Do you have any idea?
It was 27 years ago when the Buy Board was created. I've been at TASB 7 years, so I don't know if I could accurately answer that question.
Yeah. Does TASB gain any benefit from using the Buy Board or being part of it?
TASB has an agreement with the cooperative to be its administrator.
Okay. Does it generate revenue to be the administrator?
Yes, it has a revenue piece in that agreement.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Bojani.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. I wanted to ask you, is there a process in place to get feedback from members of the co-op that are experiencing frustrations with the process or the pricing? We heard City Council members from Pearland that the price was higher than what they could get otherwise. So what does that look like?
So to be honest, we get very little complaints, although we have our email address, we have our website clearly displayed. Our members call us every day, not to complain, but to help them with their purchasing. I wish the Pearland purchasing department had reached out to us. We could have helped them. For example, one of the things was said that each car, it's a $400 fee. The fee is $400 per purchase order. So if you put $1.8 million for 39 vehicles on one purchase order, the fee's $400. Other things, the price on Buy Board is for a commodity of one. That's the price for one desk. That's the price for one chair, whatever it may be. The member is always allowed to negotiate it down and get volume pricing, and many, many, many times they do. There is a request for quote process within the buy board application whereby you can say, to one of the reasons why we multi-award and have multi-vendors, you can say, in Pearland's case, I'm looking for 39 vehicles, and they may be Chevys, let's say, to the Chevy dealerships. What will you give me for this? And let them bid within the buy board for a reduced price. I wish they would have reached out. We could have told them that.
Another question, so there was some comment made about who owns buy board and all that. The way I understand co-ops is that the members get the benefit of a co-op, right?
Yes, sir.
That any savings from a co-op is given back as dividends or some savings on a yearly basis. Is that correct?
I can only speak to buy board.
Sure.
I can tell you that, buy board has a very robust rebate program to our members. It is free for members to join. There is a vendor fee that we just heard about. Buy board last year rebated $13 million back to its members. Over the course of the rebate program, the cooperative has rebated back to governmental entities in Texas more than $100 million. So in our case, that is exactly true.
So how can we ensure that the products that cities and counties and school districts are purchasing are getting their best price? How do y'all ensure that on a regular basis?
So if I can, I'll have Arturo walk you through kind of our bid process, and then we can answer that question if that's okay.
Chairman, is that okay? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us. So yeah, our process follows according to state law. We'll begin our procurement process just like any local governmental entity by advertising across 12 newspapers in the state of Texas to get that coverage from east to west, north to south. We develop our own we have our own internal procurement department that develops its own solicitation documents and issues that out. We have terms and conditions to try to keep everything very contract neutral to the benefit of our members, city, county, school districts. And then that allows us to be able to then evaluate and recommend, based on the criteria established in those solicitations, vendors for award to our board. Once a contract is awarded and is established on the buy board, members have access, as Brian has mentioned, to contact us with questions via email or phone call. In terms of pricing, the criteria that holds the most weight in our solicitations is price competitiveness. That's the first thing we look for. We look to multi-award vendors because we know that the state of Texas, being as big, vast, and broad as it is, does not have all the same needs across Texas. And so we want to be able to meet those needs through that process. So price competitiveness from that standpoint becomes very important to us. At the same time, we include language that, as mentioned, allows them to negotiate, but it's also, an industry term for it is most favored nation pricing, where the pricing on buy board will be equal to any and all other cooperatives of equal size, or anyone that does business at the scale buy board does. So at a minimum, what we do is we provide the construct so the member can then, based on their specific scope of purchase, can negotiate the best price. So to the examples shared earlier, they would be able to do that once they've developed their specific scope of a purchase. At the buy board, we don't know what each individual entity is purchasing. So we wouldn't be able to do that at a cooperative level. So we try to keep everything in a very general manner from a standpoint of one, to be able to give everyone an option to purchase.
And we also heard that there are multiple co-ops for purchasing in the state of Texas. How do we benchmark or compare? How does buy board compare with others?
Well, as Arturo mentioned, I mean, there's a most favored nations clause in there. But we also have similar vendors. So you can, and many of our members will price shop all the cooperatives. In other instances, you might have a Lowe's and a Home Depot. And so Lowe's might be on one contract and a Home Depot might be on another. So you can compare two different companies there. So you can do it between the contracts or between the cooperatives themselves. In buy board's case, because of our, as Arturo just mentioned, because we multi-award, you can actually go through and request a quote from each of the vendors within the buy board and get them to bid against each other. So not only have we done the competitive procurement process up front, but then you can almost do it again with inside the buy board application.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Representative Tinderhold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for being here today. So is it fair to say that you guys are taxpayer-funded, or mostly taxpayer-funded? Is that a fair assessment because you receive payments from taxpayer-funded schools, and then you receive funds through buy board for the fees on using buy board? Would that be a fair assessment?
I don't think so.
Why?
And the reason I say that is the buy board fees are paid by vendors, which are individual companies. So
Are
they
there companies that are not tax-paying entities, taxing entities, like school boards, cities, counties?
that are paying vendor fees.
Yeah.
The cities and counties and school districts pay no vendor fees on the buy board.
What fees do they pay?
It is completely free. The only thing they get from is a rebate.
Then why did the city of Pearland pay $400 a vehicle, and then they explain that, the fee that they were talking about?
So the city of Pearland paid the dealership. I don't know if I haven't seen that, so I don't know if they paid the dealership a line item of $400. I don't know if they just understand from the dealership that the dealership's fee is $400.
It says right here, I'm looking at it, buy board fee, code BB, $400.
So that is something that the dealership added to the invoice. That is not something that buy board requires.
So do you feel that buy board has the best interest of taxpayers in mind when there's really no competitiveness in it? The example is, there's companies that want to provide proposals to cities, counties, school boards, and can't because they're not in the system. And it's very difficult to get into the buy board system, by the way. Do you feel like you're providing the best opportunity for these taxing entities to have the best price?
So there are 28,000 vendors in our system. So we think there is a very large pool to choose from. And we think by pooling together all of the interests of all of our members, that we can provide them with excellent value. We also do not discourage them. In fact, we encourage them to shop other cooperatives. And if they think that bidding it out themselves would be better for their local district or their local city or their local county, then we will encourage them to do that as well. We are just an option for our members in helping them procure goods and services.
Where does most of your revenue come from?
For the buy board, it comes from
No,
our.
from TASB overall.
I couldn't.
Is it fair to say there's over $30 million in fees that are paid from school boards around the state?
To TASB or to?
Just for fees to TASB, the revenue that TASB's paid, what does TASB get paid annually from school districts?
I could not answer that question.
I believe, and someone can correct me here, but I think it's to the tune of $30 million. I can be corrected.
I'm sorry, I don't.
So does TASB provide legal and policy guidance to school districts?
Yes, we have a policy piece. We also have a legal assistance fund that is, again, part of the membership that we offer, that they can call at any time, and we
so-
will advise them on current law.
So because you're receiving millions in taxpayer funds, and because you're providing legal and policy recommendations to school districts, I would venture to say that you are a taxpayer-funded lobbying group. Is that a fair assessment?
We provide goods and services to our members.
Are you a taxpayer-funded lobbying group?
Sir, I couldn't answer that question. I can have you
Okay.
talk to some folks. I'm with the procurement side of the house.
So are you guys apolitical, meaning you don't pick parties to support?
I will tell you that we have several discussions on a regular basis about how we are neither left nor right, but we are for kids. So we will do our best be on behalf of education or educating our kids in the state of Texas.
Would you
Outside
be-
of that,
Would you
I
be
couldn't tell you.
surprised to know that TASB on their mission statement said that they support DEI, which the state has outlawed?
I did not know that the state had outlawed that.
So we did at the collegiate level, and if you say that you're not playing politics with taxpayer money, it's gone now, it was removed, but in 2023, it said that you guys supported diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you were making those recommendations to school boards across the state. What would you say to that?
I could say any statements like that are done at our delegate assembly
Okay.
every year. That delegate assembly is a culmination of hundreds of school board members from across the country, both urban, rural, large, small, Republican, Democrat. It's a microcosm of the state of Texas. And any statements that are made like that come directly from that delegate assembly.
How long have you been with TASB?
7 years, just under.
So do you remember in March of 2023 when the Republican Party of Texas requested that school boards disassociate from TASB? Do you recall that?
I recall that occurred, yes.
And
I
so
wasn't involved with that. but-
It occurs, those things occur because you are indeed receiving millions in taxpayer funds through fees, through school boards, and other taxpaying entities, which does make you a taxpayer-funded lobbying group. I'm just going to read pieces and parts of this real quick, and then I'll be done with my questions.
Okay.
Whereas the Texas Association of
And
School
Representative, I
Boards.
hate to interrupt, but let's just, if we can focus on procurement, obviously he's the procurement guy, so
Sure.
if we want, we can bring in someone else from TASB.
Basically, your organization openly supports DEI, supported keeping whether a child feels transgender or not from parents. Parents are the best to know that stuff. And so the reason I'm asking these questions is I'm trying to show the truth, which is TASB is a taxpayer-funded entity that does lobbying, that makes legal recommendations to school boards to keep things from parents about gender and about sexuality, and they support DEI, which makes them openly a left-leaning organization that uses taxpayer dollars to do that. Do you have a statement about that? Do you have any response?
That is way beyond my purview at TASB, sir. I can tell you, we provide products and services to our members, very similar to the way that Dell provides products and services to our members, or that Train provides products and services to our members, or other things of that nature. Other than that, that's way beyond
In all
my
fairness, I
purview
know
at
you do
TASB.
procurement. I'm going to make my last statement. The organization you work for can't say that they're apolitical and take taxpayer funds and then lobby against 50% or more of taxpayers in the state of Texas by pushing liberal left policies like that. And so I'm thanking you for coming today, but I think there needs to be DOGE needs to dig deeper into TASB and what your organization does and supports, how you're funded, how the money's spent, and whether it's truly used to lobby against taxpayers and voters in the state of Texas. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Representative
I
Alders.
appreciate your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I want to follow up on some of the procurement side of the conversation that we've had. So just an initial question here. How often do y'all audit and put out for bid your purchasing contracts?
So from an audit standpoint, the cooperative is audited every single year. It's a financial audit, similar that most companies go through. It's audited every single year. As far as contracts go out, our contracts are typically bid on a 3-year cycle.
Okay. How often do y'all take a look at the purchases that are made by entities, cities? Do y'all ever audit those purchasing agreements or the contracts, because the reason why I'm asking is, it is, you said it's a $400 per purchase.
Per purchase order, yes, sir.
Purchase order.
For vehicles.
And, I've got the summary, the line by line, and it's per vehicle. So are you telling me that that is not the case?
That shouldn't have been the case. I will tell you, when we saw that Pearland was on the agenda, we looked up their purchase orders. There was one purchase order turned into the buy board in, what year was it?
In 2021.
In 2021. So the purchases that they were talking about today, we have not seen those purchase orders. I will tell you that had they come through and we would have seen that, we would have gone back to the vendor and contested that. I will tell you that.
So you wouldn't know whether or not this is happening all across the board through buy board?
Well, members, as part of their agreement with the buy board, are supposed to turn their purchase orders into the buy board so that there's a record of them. And should they get audited, and the auditor calls us and says, did you buy these 39 vehicles, or did they buy the 39 vehicles through the buy board, we can pull up the purchase order and say, yes, it's under contract number 122-23 for, whatever company it is. I can tell you in the particular instance that you just addressed, those were not turned in. We had no record whatsoever of that purchase being made.
So y'all do look at every one that is turned in and comb through it to make sure that this is not happening?
I have a group of people that enter purchase orders as they come in. We get them in PDF format, we get them in Excel spreadsheet, and we regularly review. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we review every single one of them. I will tell you that we review probably a majority of them, and in any discrepancy that we see, we push back on it, whether it be the vendor mischarging the member, which we would have pushed back on had we seen that, or even the member trying to buy something off of the buy board that is not awarded. We will push back on both of those. We exist to make sure that our members are compliant with Texas bid laws. So yeah, we ensure that happens, or to the best of our ability.
Is it possible for us to get a contract, a copy of the contract between buy board and TASB?
I couldn't answer that question. I would have to talk to our folks. I mean,
If you can, I'd like to see a copy of that.
I will
just to
have-
understand, the contractual agreement here.
I will have somebody reach out to your office.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then a follow-up on another item. So there are multiple purchasing cooperatives, you said, in the state. Are any of the other purchasing cooperatives, do you know whether any of the other purchasing cooperatives are connected in as direct a fashion to taxpayer-funded agencies as TASB is through buy board?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
So, list off the other purchasing cooperatives.
Omnia Partners, I think, was the first one that I said.
Yeah. So, there's a contractual agreement between buy board and TASB. And so what I'm saying is, do any of those other cooperatives have that kind of a relationship with a taxpayer-funded agency, essentially along the lines of what Representative Tinderholt was talking about, where you have that potentially conflict of interest? I'm curious whether any of the other cooperatives have that kind of a relationship.
I can tell you that TIPS is run through Region 8 Service Center, Education Service Center. And I think there are other cooperatives out there that are run through Education Service Centers as well.
And then last question I've got for the moment is, how much revenue comes through buy board every year? What's the annual purchasing power?
To the cooperative?
Through the cooperative.
Or to TASB?
No, the first question and then the second question, but I'd like to know how much comes through the cooperative.
So I believe last year the cooperative's revenue was approximately $32 million.
$32 million in purchases through buy board?
Well, you asked revenue. Revenue and purchases are two different.
I'd like to know the total amount of purchases.
Okay, in Texas, it was right at $2 billion of total
$2 billion?
purchases.
So $2 billion in revenue or in purchases is occurring, and $32 million in revenue through fees, I assume,
To the cooperative, yes.
to the cooperative. And then how much of that goes to TASB?
So TASB made $4.1 million last year.
Okay. That's all.
Great. Representative Curry.
Okay. So I'm going to do my best here to respect the fact that you're from procurement. And although I have a million questions that are not just for procurement, evidently, but I'm going to start with who is Dan Troxel, PhD?
Dan Troxel is my boss. He's our executive director.
Okay, and you report directly to him?
Yes, sir.
Correct, okay. And I'm not going to get into this part of it, but so I'm going to try to stick with procurement questions. And there is a Form 990 that y'all file as an organization, just for your information. Your name is listed on that form as a executive of some sort of your title.
Yes, sir.
Your pay is also listed on that form because you're a nonprofit. I'm not going to discuss that publicly here, but we can obviously look it up. So your pay is, I'm not even going to comment. I think it's reasonable for what you do, and I appreciate that. But it's part of $58 million worth of pay in the organization. So the executives in that, on your Form 990, which I happen to have a copy of, your executives are making $3 million, as a little over $3 million out of a total of $58 million. Of the $58 million worth of payroll, how much of that is in your department?
Payroll specifically? That's a great question. I mean, I couldn't give you an answer, but it's a few $1 million.
A few $1 million.
Yes.
That's it? Out of $58 million in,
Yeah, I can get back to you with a exact number, but it's,
okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
And this is a payroll that you manage?
Yes, I have several different business units that I manage, yes.
Okay, what would those be?
Well, I have the buy board. We help with facilities. We help our members run their facilities better. We help them keep compliant with asbestos, lead paint, and other environmental issues that's required by the state. So we help them with that. We have a board book product to help our members run more efficiently. So yeah, there's a few different business items that we have to help.
So
our
you're
members.
part of the senior executive management team of TASB, correct?
Yes, you could say that.
Okay. So I'm going to go to it's part 3 of the 990, and it's paragraph 4C. I know that you'd have to be familiar with, you have to be familiar with this, and I mean, you had to have had a hand in writing
I had no part whatsoever in our 990.
So you're responsible for all of this, and you have no part in writing section 4C. Is that correct?
I don't even know what 4C is.
Okay. 4C would be the description of the cooperative purchasing area of TASB and what all it does. So I'm going to go through a little bit on that, but first I'm going to start with the national. So it lists some of the things that, and by the way, I'm going to read from it where it says, by board, a TASB trademarked name. So that indicates to me that TASB does own buy board, and you're telling me it does not. Now, is that a technical answer that you're trying to give me?
No, sir. So the local government purchasing cooperative is the official entity, is the cooperative itself. The local government purchasing cooperative is not very good for marketing. Nobody will remember it. So I assume back many, many, many years ago, the term buy board was created as the trade name, and TASB trademarked that.
So you happen
But
to
I
own
wasn't
the
there at the
name of a third-party company in which you just charge an administrative fee. Is that what you're trying to testify to today,
As
sir?
part of the agreement with the local government purchasing cooperative, they license the name buy board.
So if you own their name, then you pretty well own it, don't you?
No, sir. The local government purchasing cooperative can fire TASB at any time.
Really? And what do y'all do with the name if they do that?
Well, we would have options with it. I don't know what we would do with it.
Would you sell it to them? Would you give it
We
to them?
could.
What would you do?
We could do any of those.
You could do any of those, couldn't you?
Yes, sir.
So it's pretty strong control if you own the name of somebody else's company. In any business, just so you know. I mean, look, I'm pretty familiar with corporate structures, so I can just tell you that stood out to me as a very unusual answer for the fact that you own their name.
So,
Okay, that's fine. We'll dig into that a little deeper. So you also own the TASB Energy Cooperative, correct?
again, the energy cooperative is a separate entity with a separate board.
And they got the name TASB Energy Cooperative from TASB, so they own the TASB name,
I don't know who owns that name, to be honest with you.
the TASB name?
No, the TSB Energy Cooperative name. I don't know if the cooperative owns that or I honestly don't know.
Okay, look, it's pretty obvious that the connections here are very strong. And no matter, I mean, we can dance around this all we want to dance around it. It's in your own disclosures, sir. I mean, I'm reading your disclosures.
Yes, sir.
And you're an officer of TASB, correct?
I'm an executive. I don't know if I'm an officer, but I'm an executive.
Okay, well, I can probably find that on here too, but
Okay.
I would say, I'm gonna, and you also have another section in here, which is the risk management cooperative. I'm looking for the name of it. Is that under your purview?
It is not.
It's not. So do you know what it is?
Yes, I know what it is, but
Can you tell
I
us
don't
what
work
it
in
is, please?
The best of my knowledge, the risk management fund is a pooled, I'm going to butcher this because I don't work in it every day, but it's a pooling that our members of the fund come together to help themselves with losses.
Okay. So would it surprise you if I told you that in item 4C of your 990, that it clearly says that all of the money recorded from the procurement side is reported as unrelated business income, and it appears to me to be $30 million?
So I don't know the definition of unrelated business income. We can talk to our accounting folks on that.
We will. Does it go in, but it's in the 4C under your department. I mean, this is your department.
Yes, yes.
So.
But we have tax attorneys that tell us what's unrelated business income and what is not unrelated business income. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so we'll delve into that at a different point in time. Does the local board, what'd you call it, the local buying cooperative?
The local government purchasing cooperative.
The local government purchasing cooperative. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna write that down. So does it have its own balance sheet?
It is, well, yes, it does. It does. Yeah, it's run through our accounting department, yes.
So is it reported on your 990? Do you know that?
I do not know that.
Is it a consolidated statement with that local?
I can have our accounting group reach out to you. I don't know.
Okay, I'd like to know the answer to that.
Yes, sir. We'll get that to you.
I mean, if it's a separate company, I would assume that it would have its own financials,
It does.
its own balance sheet, and that would not be included in yours because even though you do own the name.
I know it. I know from the board meetings, we report on the financials every single board meeting. But again, how it's wrapped up into TASB, that is way beyond my job.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to determine how separated it is because it doesn't appear to be very separated to me. And I think there's plenty of pieces to that that we need to ask a bunch of questions about. I mean, I'm looking at an entity that I can't figure out. I mean, it clearly lists what's going on here, and I'm looking at a balance sheet now on the entity which Buy Board seems to be a huge piece of, and that's sitting on $54 million in cash and cash equivalents from what our taxpayer funded portions, which are coming, these fees, whether those were reported. And I would like for you to write down this number if you don't mind, because this is actually, I think this is your number. which is it's AIR-23-684, which is, so that's actually a Pearland number, a city of Pearland number, I'm sorry, but there should be a corresponding number back to the buy board transaction.
Again, we don't have, the purchases that the Pearland folks talked about, we don't have in our system. They never turn them in. So if they turn them in, we can correspond it. But if I look in our system right now, we don't have those purchases.
Well, that
They
begs
never
another
turn them in.
question then. Do you do forensic audits on your vendors?
We do not do forensic audits on all of our vendors, no. We have the ability to audit them, but I can't sit here and say we do forensic audits on 2,000 vendors.
Okay, so this Chastang Ford, Chastang, y'all may, we can get you a copy of this if you need it. But Chastang Ford charged $400 on every vehicle, by the way, even multiple vehicle purchases. So I think that was brought out by Representative Alders. They charge that fee, and you don't show any record of y'all being paid those fees.
So in the buy board, or with the buy board, the requirement is on the member to turn in their purchase order when they make a purchase. So when they send that purchase order to the dealership, as part of their membership, they are to turn that purchase order into us. That's how we know the purchase was made.
So you're saying the city of Pearland would be at fault, even though the Ford dealership charged the fee?
I wouldn't say they're at fault. I would just say that they didn't turn in that purchase order.
So if the city of Pearland would have, and I'm not picking on them, so I apologize for this, but if the city of Pearland would have turned that into you, would they have had to pay you a $400 fee per vehicle or per transaction?
So we would have been paid by Chastain in that example.
Oh.
But had we seen vehicle by vehicle by vehicle by vehicle fee, we would have pushed back on Chastain very hard and actually corrected that.
So you do have somebody that audits them. Where would you have seen it?
When the purchase order was turned in.
So you have individuals auditing every purchase order that's turned in. I think you testified a minute ago you did not.
No, we have individuals that enter purchase orders. We have processes in place. I think Arturo can speak better to that.
So we have a process in place where purchase orders come in on a daily basis to the buy board, and we have a team that enters those orders to our system.
Okay, so let's get into that process. Let's get into your purchasing process for a second.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that y'all are very familiar with the state's requirements of bidding out, correct? So
Yes.
in that requirement, the purchases up to $10,000 have a process for it in which local entities can purchase without necessarily bidding. And then anything over 10,000 to 25,000, the informal bids to at least 3 vendors and so on. It goes, there's a 25 to 100,000 bucket. There's an over $100,000 bucket. So I saved you the testimony on that because you know it. But because do y'all follow that process in order to exempt taxpaying entities from having to follow that process and procurement agents from doing so? Do y'all follow that process for them and certify it on every piece?
So according to state statute, school districts, for example, have multiple methods by which they can make their procurement and their purchases. The method that they utilize, a cooperative, like the buy board, is the interlocal agreement method. We at the buy board, utilizing our staff, will go through a competitive procurement process to solicit vendors to our contracts. Those contracts are then evaluated against the criteria established in our solicitations, and those recommendations, as a result of that, are presented to our board. Those vendors recommended and approved by our board are then presented to our members for their availability to purchase from.
Do you do public solicitations as well?
Yes, as I stated earlier, so we publish in 12 newspapers across Texas every one of our solicitations. They are publicly posted on the website for the buy board, and all vendors are welcome to participate.
Okay. So I'm going to go back now to a couple of other things, and then I'm going to move on. But when you mentioned that it's not the largest, who is?
That's a great question. I don't know what their total volume is. I know Omnia Partners is larger than we are. I know Sourcewell is larger than we are. And
And TIPS is
TIPS is
close.
pretty close to our size, if not bigger than we are.
What was the last one?
TIPS,
And the previous one was, say it again, if you don't mind?
Sourcewell.
Sourcewell, okay. Okay, so that just kind of begs another question is that, is it, and, I mean, you have an association, and I'm assuming all these others are associations as well, I have no idea, but you certainly have an association that is managing and operating and owns the name of a purchasing co-op. On $2 billion worth of purchases, per your statement, you've rebated $13 million back to, I didn't run the calculation on that percentage, but it's relatively low, back to your members. I am a member of some co-ops as well, mainly agricultural. And so we tend to get a whole lot better rebates than that, but because of the buying power. But wouldn't you say that you being a member or driven organization that represents schools, that there's a conflict of interest in you owning this process that's open to cities and counties and state governments and universities and just about anybody that wants to join? Hospitals?
I don't know if I follow that question.
Okay, I'll rephrase the question. Okay. So, do you think an association operating a purchasing cooperative that prospective members may use is a conflict of interest?
I do not know.
You do not. Okay, so you think it's okay for you to have a profit motive to save money for your clientele and other clienteles as well?
Well, I think if we can save them money, as you just said, that is a good thing for them.
Okay, but it's okay for you to make money off of that by the fees that you charge for the taxpayer money that's paying for these items.
If we can save them money that they otherwise could not save, and it is beneficial, yes. And ultimately, it is up to their choice whether to use us or not. As we mentioned, there are several other cooperatives, many of them, or at least 2 or 3 of them, bigger than we are operating in the state of Texas. They also can bid on their own. They also can use the state. So what we believe is we want to offer them the options to find the best products and services at the best price available to them. We are just one avenue to do that.
Okay. I appreciate your testimony. I appreciate, that you came and even showed up. And obviously, we'll have a whole lot more questions, and we'll spend time one-on-one working on some of these things because I think they're all very important.
Yes,
I would
sir.
like to meet your executive director at some point and spend some quality time with him.
Yes, sir. I will make sure that he knows that.
Thank you for coming.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, appreciate it. Representative Rodriguez-Ramos.
Thank you, Mr.
Just members, I'm putting in a 75-question time limit, so.
A what?
75-question limit.
Okay, 75 minutes? Just kidding. I'm kidding. Thank you so much. Now, what else does TASB do?
Oh, TASB does a number of things. Again, a lot of that stuff is way beyond what I do, but we offer services to our members as far as we help them understand how much to pay teachers. We have an HR services group that does a process that reviews, compensation in the area and let them know, how much to pay a teacher. Small districts love that because many times they don't know what the competitive rate for a teacher is and they don't understand why they're losing teachers. So we help them with that. We help them with their policies, as was mentioned earlier, to make sure that policies within a school district are compliant with whatever the law is at the time, which it changes all the time based on court cases and things of that nature. So we try and stay ahead of that so that they don't have to try and do that. Obviously, we help them with their procurement. We have the risk management fund, which assists them as well. So, yeah, TASB does a number of things to help our members.
Okay, wonderful. So you also provide training, professional development, resources to help school boards and trustees become effective leaders.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in addition to your procurement piece of it. And the So going to buy board, and I know there was a question about the licensing, and you not having the name, or who has the name and not having any rights. It sounds similar to Trump putting his name on buildings and not owning them. Would that be something similar where they're licensing the name, but they don't necessarily own the property? So there is a relationship, but not a fiduciary type of relationship where they're intermingling funds or what have you.
Yeah, as part of the agreement with the cooperative, they license the name. The legality of who has to own the name and the trademark, all that stuff, that is way beyond me and happened long before me.
Yes, sir.
But that's the way it is set up. It's just a license.
Okay, wonderful. Now, the ISDs going to ISDs that you represent, those ISDs are all over the state, so a matter of over 5.5 million students, right?
Yes.
And I know my esteemed colleague here had an issue with DEI, but when you talk about 5.5 million children, the majority of those are minorities, and so we do want to make sure that our children all over the state feel included in everything that we do. So thank you for training the professionals who are overseeing those children. Now, going back to buy board, and we were able to pull up a list. I'm sure all of you have it here. Every single one of us represents entities that are buy board customers. Our chairman here has 17 entities. Mr. Bajani has 21. Mr. Alders has 19. Mrs. Bowers has 9. Briscoe Kane, 16. Ms. Campos, 21. David Cook, 15. Pat Curry has 23. And what's interesting, and I didn't even know, buy board also represents churches. So St. Jerome Catholic Church, Waco Community Development Corporation, Hewitt Community Church, which it sounds like all of these entities, Linda Garcia, 9, Mike Alcott, 13, I have 8. I mean, I can go on and on. Mr. Tenderholt here has 11, Troxclair 21. So with having some of these churches, United Methodist Church, it seems like these entities, they're not mandated to be part of this co-op, right? So it seems like these entities, we could depend on their own independence and ability to make those decisions, whether they're being efficient in this procurement process or not. The churches, the school districts, whoever will decide. And so I want to thank you, because it sounds like all of these entities think that this buy board is doing something right at some point, right? And so I just want to thank you on behalf of all these entities for providing that service to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Olcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bollinger, I have a question. I'm still a little confused about the risk management fund. This is the first time I've heard about it. Can you explain to me, maybe in about 60 seconds, what it does? And then I'd also like to know, how much is in it? Where does it get its money? And I have a couple other follow-up questions.
Yeah, I have no idea the answer to any of those questions. I apologize. I can have the person in charge of the fund reach out, but I don't have.
You don't know what the purpose of the risk management fund is, or how much money is in it?
I have no idea how much money's in it. I mean,
Okay.
I assume the purchase is to help the members.
Okay, and how does it get its money? Where does the revenue come from? Do you know that?
I have no idea how that works. That is not part of what I do every day.
Okay. Do you know if it's managed internally, or is it subcontracted out to another investment organization?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Do you know
I can
if
find
it's-
out. I can find out and have them reach out to you.
Do you know if it's annually audited? Is that fund audited? Do you know that?
I know my groups are audited. I don't know about any of the other things that are done at TASB.
Would you be kind enough to send the most recent audit to my office, please, of the risk management fund?
I can reach out to the person and give them your request, yes.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
Representative Alders.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on two things real quickly. So back on the purchasing side of things, if a member purchases through a vendor, but they do not turn in the purchase order, then y'all don't have a way to classify that or to look at what the details were of that transaction. Is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate. We don't have it in the system. We've never seen it.
So, but, take 13 or 39 vehicles that were purchased times 400, you received revenue into your account. I'm just curious, how do you classify that? Because you got paid.
I will tell you, we did not get paid. If it did not hit our system, we did not get paid because we didn't know to bill it.
Well, Representative Curry asked a question regarding that Ford purchase, and there's $400 per vehicle. And my understanding is the vendor paid y'all. You're saying the vendor didn't pay you even though they charged for it?
So the way it works is when the purchase order comes in, we have a record of it, and then we bill the vendor the fee for that.
Right.
If the purchase order never comes in, we never have a record of it, and we don't know to bill the vendor. So in that instance, you know,
So
just
you're
based,
saying the vendor ripped you off, essentially?
I will say that we did not bill the vendor.
I don't know how often, I find it curious that this is, we just happened to call in the city of Pearland and we have this instance, and there's $2 billion of purchases that are going on annually, and we caught one that, y'all got, ripped off, or somebody got ripped off here. I'd be worried that taxpayers are getting ripped off. So I'd recommend looking into the processes on that.
That is something that occurs on a regular basis, is members do not turn in their purchase orders. And, if an auditor calls us, we remind them, and we send out reminders all the time that, they are to turn in their purchase orders. But to say that all of them do, we found one right there. 100% they don't do. We try to get them to do it, but many times they don't. And in that instance, nobody pays that fee. Or maybe, if Pearland paid it to Chastain, then, but now that we know that, we will reach out to Pearland. We will get a copy of that purchase order, and we will address it with Chastain before this week's over.
And I assume if we reach out to Chastain Ford, that you're telling me there is no outgoing expense on their account already to buy board.
Well, there will be, because they sell many vehicles through the cooperative.
But connected to this
that
purchase order.
particular
Purchase
one,
order.
there won't be, because we never saw it. So the only way we know to bill it is if we receive the purchase order. If
Okay.
we never receive the purchase order, we don't know it exists.
Right.
It's like, you buying something from Home Depot and expecting P. Terry's to understand that purchase was made. It doesn't exist. We didn't know that it happened.
This seems antiquated for $2 billion worth of purchases. That's just my experience on the business side. It seems like there ought to be a solution, IT solution, software solution that would allow everything to speak to everything else, every entity to be talking to each other, and this kind of transaction can't fall through the crack, because I'd be concerned what this means for the rest of that $2 billion.
If there's one thing that keeps me up at night, it's creating efficiencies like that. We know that's an issue. It is a really difficult puzzle to solve, because each one of you have buy board members who use different ERP systems. Some of them may use Skyward, some of them may use SAP, some of them may use, Teams Pro Logic, or whatever the current company is. They all use different ERP systems.
Right.
And so it is very difficult to electronically integrate with each one. I can tell you the buy board has integrated with Skyward. So Skyward is a big user in school districts. So if they make a purchase through buy board using the Skyward system, there is transparency there, and we get a copy of it. So we are working to solve that problem right now, but it is a large issue that all purchasing cooperatives have a problem with. The state even has a problem with it. I was speaking with somebody who was instrumental in helping create the state program back in the 90s, and then became purchasing director at other organizations. And according to him, in order to use the state program, you have to complete 2 different purchase orders. You have to complete one in your system, and you have to complete one in the Texas system. You have to do double the work,
Right.
because they're not integrated. And they're all different companies and different integrations. If there were one ERP system that covered everybody, problem solved.
I believe the inefficiencies are there. I just would expect them to, the private sector that is receiving taxpayer funds, but
I can tell you we're working
you'd
on
be
it.
able to be much more efficient than the state on this and be way ahead of us. And so I'd just say catch up as soon as possible because that's a big problem. Last question is 91. Do you know the amount of revenue that TASB receives annually?
Not off the top of my head, I do not.
I mean, the quick search is around 91 million annually, and I'm just curious if you know what the other sources of revenue are. If there's $4 million that comes through buy board as a ranking member of the team there, what are those other revenue streams?
So the way TASB is set up, there are multiple different budgets within the organization based on whatever folks are in charge of. And so, their sources come in from a multitude of things, but I can't sit here and list every single one of them for you.
Can you get us a copy of that?
I can take that request back, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Kane, one question. I'm not trying to, trick you with this question because I think it just needs clarification, right?
Okay.
I don't believe you were intentionally being dishonest, right? So I'm not calling you a liar. Earlier, I believe someone asked a question, and your answer, which we had a court reporter here to read it back to us, was that you didn't have to be a member or of TASB to purchase the buy board. But I guess the website says that school boards have to be members of TASB in order to buy from it.
Yeah, I don't remember making that statement, but there are several different members of the buy board that are not members of TASB. A city is not a member of TASB, a county is not a member of TASB, a municipal utility districts are not member of TASB,
What
the
about
churches
like
are
the-
not members
the
of TASB.
Mid-sized school, rural school districts, TASA, are they members?
Can you read that? I'm sorry.
TASA, like the
TASA
mid-sized
is,
schools?
the organization TASA, I don't know if they are a member.
So the school districts pay dues to TASA, the school districts pay dues to TASB, and then they pay dues to TASA. They also give y'all money as well. I'm sorry. No further questions. Just I think you
I
may
don't know.
realize
I
your
don't
organization. You've done great today. Your organization's drawn the ire of the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, conservatives across this state, members on this dais. Please know the ire wasn't directly at you. You're probably a husband, father. You've got a family and things. I just hope that you find another job with another organization eventually, because we want to see this one shut down. But it's not about you. But thank you.
Well, I'd be more than happy to meet with you in your office anytime.
Representative
But thank you.
Troxler.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the revenue. So $2 billion in purchases, $32 million in revenue, 4.1 went to TASB. Do you know what other entities received money from the co-op? So, for example, did Texas Association of School Administrators, Texas Association of Counties, are they also receiving revenue from buy board
From the cooperative
or rebates? Yes.
through rebates. So the rebates are based on purchasing volume. There's a formula that the board approves every year. And so it's based on volume. And based on that formula, anyone who is a member of TASB who, according to that formula, has a rebate of $100 or more, they will get a rebate.
So when you talked about the 4.1 million that went to TASB, what is that revenue? What was
Yes.
that number?
Yes, that was the net revenue number, yes.
Okay, sorry. Then I'm asking about revenue. Is there revenue that is going to other associations?
From the cooperative,
Yes.
So there are endorsement agreements, I think, with the cooperative. But I don't know what those are off the top of my head.
So your website says endorsed by Texas Association of School Administrators, Texas Association of School Boards, Texas Association of Counties, and Texas Municipal League.
Yes.
So if there's 4.1 million going to TASB, what I'm trying to understand is are there other payments that are going to those other entities?
So from the cooperative, there are some of the payments. So the short answer to your question is yes. And the reason I hesitate is some of the agreements are with the cooperative itself, and some of it is with TASB. So, and I don't remember off the top of my head which is which.
Okay.
Sorry.
So could you follow up
Yes.
with me with the amount of money that's going to those entities?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And then my last question is, how many invoices do you think are not turned in by I mean, I know it's hard to know, right? It's hard to count what's not out there, but it seems like a pervasive problem that you're aware of. So similar to this Pearland situation, how many invoices out there are not being turned in, do you think? 50%?
Oh, no. I wouldn't say anywhere close to 50%, but it's enough to get our attention, and it's enough to make us work on it every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and so then that's times however many those invoices are. There was $400 in that particular invoice, right, that should have gone to you, right?
It would have gone to the cooperative. The cooperative gets the payment, yes.
That should have gone to the cooperative.
Yeah.
So it's 400 times the number of contracts out there, except for the contracts that are 2% of the total invoice, right? So it's potentially a significant amount of money.
Yeah, so that's the cooperative fee. So just want to be clear, so we're talking apples to apples here. The fee goes into the cooperative itself, and then from there it gets distributed based on a number of things, and then whatever is left over gets rebitted back to members.
Okay. And could you report back? You said it's enough to make you worry about it and work on it every day. So can you report back with a plan of how it's going to be resolved?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I'm not sure we have the complete plan. It is, I know we're working on it through a number of different things, including looking at agendas and meeting minutes to see where boards have approved purchases, and then checking to see if those purchases were turned in by the member. It is working with integrating with ERP systems, which there are several out there, so that is very difficult to do. But yes, we have thoughts on how to help solve that problem.
Okay, surely there's got to be a better way out there than going through the minutes of every city council meeting.
I agree with you. We're trying to find it. Yeah.
Okay, and for clarity, it's not really like Representative Alders bought something from Home Depot and expecting P. Terry's to know about it, because in that situation, Home Depot owes P. Terry's money. So there's a gap here that needs to be closed.
Yes, and the impetus for the payment is our billing to them. And so, the point of the Pearland issue is if it never gets in the system, it never gets billed. If it never gets billed, it never gets paid.
Thank you.
Representative Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. But the problem here is twofold with the Pearland example, right? Not only should the city not have paid that fee, they should not have been charged a fee, correct? The city
They should have been, if again, I haven't seen that invoice, or the purchase order, but if all 39 vehicles were on one purchase order, the fee should have been $400. It should not have been 400 times 39.
Well, basically how they did it, they did separate invoices, and so they did two, so they would charge them $800, and they sell two more, and they charge them another $800.
Yeah, there are school districts that buy a fleet of school buses, and it's just one fee per purchase order.
And going back to the ownership issue, I know you said that TASB does not own Buy Board, but with regard to the creation, you don't dispute that TASB created Buy Board, correct?
Again, that was long before my time, but it's my understanding that 4 school districts in Texas came together to form the local government purchasing cooperative. I don't know off the top of my head who those 4 were. We were trying to remember that earlier today, but those were the 4 districts that initially formed the cooperative. So,
And do you think you should be charging the governmental entities if you've had enough money to refund $100 million? I mean, do you think either the fee should be lowered or eliminated to the governmental entities? It sounds like this entity is a ongoing enterprise, and this $400 fee is not going to make or break TASB. But it doesn't seem like you should be charging a $400 fee if you're able to return $100 million back to your members.
yeah, we've had conversations about that, and that's a great question. It is a phenomenal question. So here's our thought. The cooperative charges a 2% fee. Vehicles is a separate issue because it's a flat fee per purchase order, but typically most contracts are 2%. There have been conversations and debates on, can that fee go to 1%? Our opinion of it, and people are free to disagree, but our opinion of that is if we change the fee to 1%, and it's to the vendor's not going to change their price to the member. That's an extra 1% profit for the vendors. So we are of the opinion we would rather keep that fee at 2%, bring that into the cooperative. The price is the same for the member, and then rebate that excess back to the member. That's our opinion. And again, it's subject to debate, but that's what we believe would occur if we changed our fee and reduced our fee. The member would get charged the same amount. The vendor would just make more money. So we would rather keep the vendor honest, so to speak, and rebate it back to members.
And I know earlier you said you would provide the contract, and were you referring to the contract between Buy Board and the governmental entities, the members, or were you talking about the contract between Buy Board and the vendors?
So there are interlocal agreements that each member signs to join the cooperative.
Is that fee set out in that agreement?
Do you know off the top of your head?
No, there is no fee set out in the agreement. There's no cost to be a member of the cooperative.
But I'm talking about the fee structure, not the membership fee, but the fee structure, like the $400. Because I thought earlier you said that the city wouldn't be paying a $400 fee, that the vendor would be paying the $400 fee. That's what I heard you say earlier.
The vendor pays the fee. We Buy Board, or the local government purchasing cooperative, gets 0 checks, Venmos, cash, whatever from governmental entities, its members.
Right.
All
And
the
so
revenue comes from the
when
vendors.
I asked you, this is a twofold problem.
Okay.
The reason I said that is because the invoice is between the dealership and the city, and the dealership is charging the city $400 or $800. And so what I'm hearing you saying is they should not be charging a fee at all, and instead they should be paying a fee, the vendor should be paying a fee to Buy Board, correct?
So the 2 places the fee structure is discussed. In the interlocal agreement, we
Can you
make.
can you just answer my question? My question is should the invoice from the dealership to the city,
Mm-hmm.
should there have been a $400 fee on that invoice?
Not on the invoice to the city.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So this is a twofold problem. Not only is this dealership charging the city, but also the vendor failed to pay Buy Board. Is that correct?
So it requires a little bit bigger of an answer, but the answer is the fee structure is clearly stated in all of our solicitations, and the vendors know that when they agree to the terms and conditions.
Well, this vendor didn't. I mean, I thought you said that they're not supposed to be charging the entity, correct? They're not charging the governmental entity.
They are charging it in their awarded pricing, and then we bill them the fee for the purchase order received.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll make sure that you guys have copies of this, but this is just
Yeah, we definitely would want a copy of that.
Yeah, this is
Yes,
a
sir.
purchase of a vehicle,
Yes, sir.
and it shows a $400 fee or an $800 fee.
We would want a copy
And
of
so
that.
not only are they illegally charging the entity, but also they're not paying the Buy Board.
Right. Again, we did not have record of that.
And the last question I have is, this is more of a TASB, because y'all are employed by TASB, correct? You're not employed by Buy Board. You're employees of TASB.
That is correct.
That is correct.
And you're here on behalf of TASB today.
Well, I'm here on behalf of the local government purchasing cooperative and TASB as its administrator.
Okay. Well, I listened to how you were introduced. You were introduced as a representative of TASB. So I was just looked on y'all's website to look at your advocacy agenda for this session, and it shows for it to be a 2024-2026 advocacy agenda, and it's locked to the public. And so I was just curious, I mean, here we are halfway through the legislative session in 2025, and is that still a secret what the advocacy agenda is, or is it only available to your members? I just, as a legislator, I'd be curious to know what your advocacy agenda is halfway through the legislative session.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't deal with that side of the house, so to speak. But I can have one of our government relations folks reach out to you and have them talk to you about that.
I'd just like to know if that's a public document or not.
To be honest with you, I do not know.
That's why I'm asking you to find out and
Yeah.
let my office know.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Members, any other questions? All right, I have one. I wait till the end. But I was curious on conflicts of interest, right? Because traditionally, let's say at a city and you're on a city council, you're not supposed to make some sort of decision, right? Whether it's a vote or something similar on a purchase if you yourself as a city council member have a vested interest in the outcome. Maybe you own 10% of the business, or you're a relative, however many degrees of consanguinity. So, but they may be making a decision to ask you all to make a purchase, right? So how do you, right? I mean, does the city, either through the city or the city manager, effectively might be saying we need to buy a certain number of trucks? Well, how do you all make sure that as you go out and talk to vendors, that when the purchase is finally made and the city council members who have participated in the decision to ask you all to make that and to make that purchase, they themselves don't have a conflict of interest with the vendor? You know, what is the process by which you maintain what the law says in the local government code, that the city council members or the school board trustees or the other executives in those government entities aren't running afoul of conflict of interest statute?
So as it applies specifically to a local entity and their own specific council and their own staff, we do not get involved with that.
Okay.
The cooperative itself has its own conflict of interest policy, which we abide for.
For
staff.
inside of itself?
For inside of the
Okay.
cooperative and the staff that belongs to the cooperative.
So could there be a situation where a city council member is approving a purchase of whatever, 34 cars or trucks, and then maybe knowingly or unknowingly goes to the co-op, and then the co-op goes and uses a truck dealer that council member might have ownership interest in?
Right, so we're not involved in that local decision and how they select the vendor. We provide a multiple award schedule of vendors
Okay.
from which that local entity can choose from.
Okay, so the final decision is made
At the local level,
at the
sir.
local level
Yes, sir.
after they know who the vendor is going to be.
Correct,
If
sir.
I could add a little bit to that, the role of the cooperative is to do the procurement. So
Yes.
we like to say, we take the ball at the 20-yard line and we drive it down to the 10-yard line and then turn it over at the local level for them to complete the purchase. So we've ensured that if they are looking at vendors within the buy board, it has been procured according to state law, and it is compliant, and they will pass an aut. But the local processes, the local procedures, a lot of the stuff.
You're not told any of that?
No.
Okay. All right, interesting. All right, members, any other questions? If not, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate
Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that concludes today's testimony on government procurement. We will now move on to our conversation on the efficient use of government property. So today we have invited the Texas Facilities Commission to provide an overview of the state-owned and leased properties across Texas. They will discuss how these assets are managed and explore opportunities to improve efficiency. As stewards of taxpayer resources, it is essential that we